Hello, and welcome to this series, The Person of the Therapist. Now, in this series, we're really looking at the origin stories, the developmental moments. What is the journey that therapists take to become psychiatrists, social workers, psychologists, marriage and family therapists? There are a variety of approaches in therapy, but the lived experience of the therapist can really help us understand what they value, um, their vision for how they work with clients, and maybe how that evolved over the years. Sometimes we touch on what is it that you think might be a problem or concerning about the training of therapists, and then what it is that my guest would really like to say, to speak to other therapists, not only the new individuals who are just entering the field or who may be thinking about it, but also very seasoned, because every therapist, no matter how long they've been working, has something important and valuable from their own experience to give. Now, I'm delighted to welcome my guest, Jessica Prentice, who is working in Maryland. But Jessica, I will let you introduce yourself to our guests in terms of your specialization, your field that you studied in, and maybe a little bit about what it is that you currently do.
So I am a licensed clinical social worker. I'm also a board-approved social worker supervisor.
Mhm.
That's where my education stems from in my profession. Um, in my current job, I am a therapist and a supervisor for graduate student level interns as well as clinical staff we have on our team. And in addition to that, I'm a registered play therapist
Mhm.
supervisor, and really see my specialization in play therapy, working with kids from the very, very small, youngest ages up to and through adolescence, whether it's individual work or in working with families.
Now, when the littles that come to you can be as young as maybe 3 years old,
Absolutely.
and then the families that you work with, sometimes the entire family might join in. And I think it would be interesting for our viewers, have what is the theoretical leaning that you have? What is the lens? And maybe that's evolved over the decades, but how would you describe how you work and how you really conceptualize the concerns?
Yeah, so I am very much a person-centered, client-centered therapist. And I think even in whatever modality that I may be adding on to that, that's first and foremost the lens that I use and the lens that sticks with me in terms of who is across from me, whether it's a 3-year-old, 14-year-old, or a family of 6 all in the room together trying to figure out, how how to heal.
Hmm.
Uh-oh.
Lost you for a second there. There you are.
Yeah.
Technology is wonderful. That allows us to connect, and then it has these little bumps in the
Yeah.
road.
Yes. So yeah, I'm a person-centered
Mhm.
through and through. And that's where my lens is. I'm very much a child-centered play therapist, and that's
Okay.
that's my go-to. I strongly believe in the power of empathy, the power of allowing clients to um, be in a safe place where they are free of judgment,
Mm.
um, and fully accepted for who they are and how they show up.
So, as a play therapist, a registered play therapist, and also a registered play therapist supervisor, you work in the expressive arts using a variety of play therapy approaches. not only because it's not just for children, as you said, that
Right.
you can use a variety of play therapy approaches to bring this deep empathy, a deep listening to the stories that clients bring to you, the families or the 14-year-old, and then the type of play therapy that you use. You have play therapy rooms, you use sand therapies. What would you say uh, would be your favorite approaches, and how do you differentiate those, like for the littles and
Right.
then for the older clients?
It's really hard to say what my favorite would be. I appreciate them all in ways that, my favorite is whatever's going to work best for the clients.
Mhm, mhm.
So, I'm not going to try and have a 4 or 5-year-old sit down for 45 minutes and talk to me about, or do anything for 45 minutes just sitting down, right?
Yeah.
So I will obviously feel like maybe the playroom is the best place to start. Um, but then I have had sessions where I could just feel the immense power of sand therapy with my clients.
Mhm.
And so for me, it's really taking the lead of the clients and
Yes.
following that. And they lead me to where they need to be and what kind of work they want and need.
Well, and I want to underscore two things that that I think I agree is incredibly important. And as the deep listening, the deep empathy, that child-centered, that person-centered from Carl Rogers, that it is not just a parroting of, oh, I hear that you're angry or I hear that you're sad, but really a very practiced, very deepening, very attentive presence with your
Yeah,
clients. And then with that, the importance and the value of being so attuned, you're following their lead, really listening, not just to the what most of us are trained to say, I'm supposed to do this or that, but rather listening, I suspect, Jessica, to the layers of where they want to go and opening that, being very invitational with play, with sand, with even sometimes I'm imagining just listening deeply to their grief and to their
yeah,
trauma stories.
absolutely.
Yeah. What would you say are the important qualities that you've treasured that you think um, are really vital to our profession, to the mental health field across the professions?
hmm for me, and I talk about this with interns all the time, is the value of empathy. I think,
Would you say that again because the tapes paused?
sure. So the value of empathy, for me, I tell interns it's the closest thing that a therapist can get to a magic wand. And like true deep empathy, like kind of like what you're saying, it's not just kind of repeating back exactly what they're saying word for word, but it's really sitting with that client and being able to listen in a deep way to really be there with them through whatever, yes, lots of grief, lots of pain, um, lots of fears that they have.
Yes.
And so being able to provide empathy to even sometimes, the feelings that they have when there are no words even to describe, for me is, I think, one of the best gifts that therapy can provide.
Well, I think one of the problems in our field is in some branches, empathy has become diminished or concretized in a way or not really fully understood,
Right.
but that the Client Therapy Alliance Trust
Yes.
can only happen. The freedom of being able to truly express this suffering that you refer to can only happen when there is safety and when there is trust, this feeling that I might be able to share with you my suffering without judgment. Is that your sense?
Absolutely. 1,000%. And
That's not easy.
it's not easy. It's draining. I'm constantly trying to think of ways and to help staff here, help myself, like how do we take care of ourselves in between sessions, making sure that we're finding ways to kind of do what we need to do on our time off, like whatever it is, because you're right, there can be lots of other branches in the field that might, watch one of the sessions where what the client needed in that moment might have been a 50-minute session of just pure empathy, and think like, what are you doing? And for me, I want to hear from the client. Is that helpful, right? And to be totally, for that amount of time, present and attuned to the clients is a lot.
You really trust, and I want to underscore this. What you're really saying is you're trusting the client, not only to bridge and to help them
Yeah.
trust you, but you're trusting them in a very solid, clear way. I
Mm,
hear you. And then the skills that it takes to reflect back that's not repetitive.
right.
But what do you do? What are you doing to prepare yourself to develop that skill to take and self-care? You mentioned that. So what
Yeah.
are some of the things that you've relied on that feel right for you to get you in um, that a capacity to really be present and to really listen and respond?
Yeah. I think for me personally, definitely self-care. So I um I think I'm fortunate that it's easier for me to have boundaries that feel that I'm comfortable with. And so when I'm leaving the office, I'm
Mm.
leaving the office and I'm leaving the work there. And I'm going home to my family. I kind of see my car ride home as my way to kind of make that transition and prepare myself. And I'm taking one hat off,
Mhm.
the other hat on, and just even having that visual for me sometimes has really helped. And I, again, am very fortunate to work in an office with a team where we know that we can be there for each other. And so some
Mm.
sessions are easier than others. And so being able to share and collaborate with one another when things are going really great, and then other times when things are just hard, so that I don't have to feel like I'm doing it all alone.
What is your difference in your approach with interns? You see interns every year, new interns, and you also work with more seasoned clinicians. You have
Yeah.
a great deal of creativity that you nourish there. What are the tips or suggestions or approaches that you found most useful, most effective with with the different developmental stages for the therapists you work with?
Um, well, I'm just very person centered with them as well in the moments when they need it. Understanding that for interns, it's a learning process and reminding them that this profession, there's always something new to learn. And so the learning never ends. So I'm always telling them, you're going to do really well if you stay in that learning mode, knowing
Mm,
that when you think you just got it, then there's something else to learn.
yes.
And that learning may come from a training, it may come from class, and a lot of times it comes from who we work with. So,
Yeah.
being open to that and respecting our clients in a way that they have a lot to teach us. Um, yeah, that's
Beautiful.
that's
Yeah.
my thing.
Present no matter where they are, because it's not a prefabricated doing this with this and that, but it's again, it goes right back to that deep presence and empathy and really listening to where the supervisee or where the clinician needs or the clients.
Right.
And you also rely on not only your training, but your intuitive sensibilities. It's staying really grounded in
Mm-hmm.
those.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So important for me.
You did mention valuable lessons that I suspect you've gained over the decades from clients. Before we go there, I'd like
Mhm.
to step back in time
Okay.
to your own origin story, wherever you want to go with that.
Yeah.
But therapists often remark that something happened when they were a child or when they were in high school that gave them a sense, not necessarily of the specific discipline or field, but what about your life? What
Mhm.
about your own origin story do you feel contributes and it maybe even helped you flow into this field?
Mhm. Yeah. I'm not sure if there's one particular moment, or one
Mhm.
thing that's happened. I think it's been over time, there's been several that's just kind of helped me follow down that path. But I think from birth, I was adopted by an international adoption from Colombia, South America, from parents from here in the United States. And so I think um, everything after that has kind of led me, just the people who
Oh.
my parents are and were, and who I was surrounded by
Mhm.
in terms of the value, importance of being able to heal. And
Mm.
we all have our own different stories to tell, our own unique experiences. And I truly feel very fortunate
Mm.
to have been raised in the family and grow in the family that I did, that fully, completely accepted me, even the mistakes, I made as a kid or
Sure.
adolescence, and
Yeah.
doing it as a learning process when I know a lot of families that's not their experience.
Mm.
And I just think that there's different things along the way that just kind of help nudge me. Nope, this is the way you're going. So even when I thought maybe a different career, I was always reminded of where my heart was, and it was in helping people.
Mm. So, but I pick up from your story a clear cultural attunement,
Mhm.
adoption, attunement, the following your heart, that compassion for human experience and for the human journeys,
Yes,
through whatever life brings across the globe, and that
absolutely.
gratitude, also enormous gratitude that you have for being in a situation where you felt safe and loved and cared for and lifted up and nourished, which have then allowed your heart to be able to look out beyond yourself and to look
Absolutely.
out at how you might make a contribution to the healing of what's going on in people's lives and on our planet. What would you add to that?
I mean, I think that that says it all. Yeah, gratitude. I'm just filled with gratitude for being able to have the experiences and the awareness and understanding that um, my experiences are different from others, and that's okay. Um, and right, just looking outward, um, and you know, I'm here in this country and on a very different path than others, and being able to be around and hear stories from people of different experiences, I think there's so much to learn there. And a lot of that comes from sitting and listening, right? And so, like, in the power in that, in the human connection of being able to be in safe places to share stories.
The power of human connection. I really want to underscore that. That seems pivotal, very
Yeah.
central. Now, would you say you, because you're multilingual, you speak fluent Spanish,
Mhm.
English, and would you say then your primary population is Latina families, Latina community, as well as those not only cross generate different generations that have been here, but um, programs. I wonder what type of programs and what you feel that it's really strengthened and given a foundation of safety for those who have
Mhm.
traveled in very traumatic journeys.
Yeah, so yes, I would say primarily the families that I'm working with right now are immigrant families, Spanish speaking immigrant families that, yes, different generations have been in this country for different periods of time, whether it's years, decades, or newly arrived immigrants. And I think that's where I feel like the approaches and the modalities that I lean into and feel most comfortable for me in my work really helps with that. So not feeling like I'm the expert in the room. They are the experts in their lives, and I am here to be witness to that, to listen, to validate, to offer the empathy, um, to be that safe person so that they can share those stories, whether it's in talking about it, drawing pictures, playing it out in the playroom, or creating sand scenes of their journeys, their grief, their pain, right? Their joy too. So yeah.
Mhm. When you're working with transnational families that are in transition, families that are feeling so challenged with trying to struggle with the social, cultural, and political arrangements that may uh, constrain
Mhm.
their sense of identity and freedom and connection. What is it that you most want us all to know? What is it that if you could be the voice of the communities and the families who come to you, what is it that you think they would want us to understand, want us to know?
Mhm. Wow, just even having the weight of of having to do that without like, I want to take a moment to just even kind of like stop and listen to their voices
You've
for me.
heard so many stories. You know how their lives have been stolen, broken, alienated, and struggle, and have hope and challenges.
Right.
And you know the diversity of even within the Latina community
Mhm.
and generations.
Yeah.
And so, of course, you're not speaking for the whole community, but for those of us who want to understand
Mhm.
an essential piece of help us understand what maybe we should reflect on or
Mhm.
maybe would help us open up to
Yeah.
yeah.
I think at the root of it all, right? Maybe on what led to decisions in their journeys, to leave their native lands, to come to somewhere new, um, the struggles that many have in this transition period. I think at the root of all of that is the love they have for their families.
Mm.
So parents coming in out of concern for their kids, right? At the root of all of that is love, right? And so love for each other. And because of that love, wanting a life better for their children, looking for new opportunities, like those type of things. It just comes from like the human like love. I mean, it doesn't sound corny to me. Maybe some people would think that it does, but there's this deep love that they have for each other and their families.
A very deep love that's so organically rooted in the traditions
Mhm.
and the familial system that's just go from generation to generation. And so when they come to you, they are also bringing cultural stories and experiences that are not witnessed,
Right.
that we may not understand, and to give space, no matter one's, or, nation of origin or language, that to open up the space to be curious, to be filled with wonderment and receive, really receive, rather than pulling people's stories apart, rather than, which I think is a danger in some psychotherapeutic approaches, but rather to hold those and to keep
Yeah.
and to nourish them, would you say?
Yes, absolutely. And for them to be seen. So often they're just not seen.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
You've been in the profession for quite some time. So what is it that you feel
Mhm.
should be changed or could be enhanced as you've watched therapists come through
Yeah.
and move along? What is it that you most feel strongly about for therapist education, for therapist training? What is it that you most want them to be grounded in?
Mhm. I think And for me, like working with interns, like I noticed this is very much lacking in many graduate programs. I don't want to say all, but in many. And even in like the education that's being offered for current professionals is um, taking for granted the value of the foundational skills to
Oh,
be a clinician. I think, we can all kind of see stars in our eyes of the fancy new modality or
right.
this new trendy thing or this new word everybody wants to kind of throw in to kind of sounds like they know what they're talking about.
Mhm.
Um,
Um,
and for me, it's always been grounded in the foundational parts of what makes um for me therapy. So like a healing place, it's for your clients to be seen, for your clients to not be judged, right? It's for not moving faster than what your client is ready for, making that space, their time with you, a safe place. um Trusting the process that the client is going to do the work that they need to do. um
mhm. Mhm.
and um yeah, like the
Mhm.
self-actualization of the clients, being able to empower the client. We don't know their life better than they do. Um, and I think that sometimes it's easy to forget the value in all of those things. And that for
Mhm.
me, I often tell interns or new staff that yeah, some of these things can really help clients, deal with their anxiety or deal with some depression. They're never going to try it if they don't trust you. They're never going to take that chance to be vulnerable to do something new um, if they think that the therapist across from them doesn't have their best interest. And that comes from sitting with them, allowing all of what they may feel, the ugly parts of themselves, come out, and for
Mhm.
the therapist to accept those.
And to feel that authenticity and that
Absolutely.
acceptance, no judgment, but a
Absolutely.
real receptivity and being able for therapists to be able to stay in the question, like I don't know, and to
Right.
stay there. I want to note, I appreciate that you brought up the eye candy, as it were, for in our profession. Over many decades, it's always something to be mindful of, that there's always new theory, new approach, new technique, new whatever it may be,
Yeah.
that, like you said, language, terminology, and all kinds of things. So there are many ways to deal with trauma and to deal with deep grief and to deal with family discord and to build the alliance with the therapist, um and to but to not be drowned, not be overwhelmed, or certainly not be enamored with
Right.
any particular um theoretical lens, um although to be mindful of our and resonate with our own leaning, with our own personal skills and ability. What would you say are your primary assets, skills, qualities that you treasure the most in being a therapist, as a person?
Yeah. Well, I don't like talking about myself so much, but so humility might be one. Um,
That's a good one.
yeah,
And you're
humility.
patient. You're very
Yes,
patient.
I am very patient, and that's part of what helps ground me, I think. So if there's a fire in front of me, like, let me just take a moment. So this isn't, I'm just not impulsively reacting to something. Um,
Waiting.
yeah,
Ah, waiting.
because therapists, we're humans too, right? And so understanding that everyone else in the room is looking at us. Like,
Mhm,
let's just
mhm,
take a second here, right?
mhm,
Let's slow it down a little bit.
mhm,
Um, yeah, I think that's a quality, and I do think for me, like, giving empathy to my clients. I've just noticed, and I don't want to take it for granted. It's not easy. Um, and it's not that it's easy for me, but it's always just felt right. And
Y-
so for that, I feel like that's where I'm gonna go to, and being able to trust that the power of it.
Trust. And I'm glad you brought up power because the qualities and life experience that you've had and your approach, all of
Mhm.
these bring a sense of understanding the use and misuse, the abuse
Right.
and the useful the power of the therapist, and how to mediate that so that it doesn't become imbalanced, but that there's a deep respect for the clients. And I really hear that from your patients, your
Mhm.
non-judgmentalness, your focus, and that willingness to wait rather than I know the answer.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful patience.
It's like a dance, right? It's
Mm.
so, uh,
Beautiful. Yeah,
yeah.
I love it. Speaking of dance, did
Mhm.
you bring a couple of symbols to share with us? If you would hold one at a time, right up to your
Okay.
camera and
Yeah.
describe it, show us the details, and then I'm going to ask you, what are its qualities? You know, its weight, its texture, and what you notice. And then what does it mean for you? What did you intend to represent?
Mhm. Okay. So I'll start with this one because this is one of my favorites. It's this dolphin that's coming out of the wave, just kind of jumping
Ooh,
up. Um,
ah, oh,
and it's clear on some parts, and you can see people
beautiful.
going through it.
Really open in the front there, isn't it?
Yes.
The little flap. Oh, look at that. And just wow, lifting.
Uh-huh.
What qualities does this particular symbol hold for you?
Yeah, for me, this well, it symbolizes just the power of therapy too. And so in the experience of clients and the qualities, this confidence of the dolphin coming out of the water, being able to breathe, take breath,
Mm,
like this power you feel and kind of coming up, of coming up out of the depths of whatever it is that they're coming out of. For me is um really just for me symbolizes the experience that I hope
mm,
clients are getting through therapy and through their work of healing, and growing. Um,
mm.
you know, I don't know. It's just for me, it's just the power that it exudes.
Yes. Well, and then the bottom part there, which is clear and has points of blue, it's that
Yeah.
we can see the coming out of the waters, and your metaphor about how that very bottom is for the client coming out of and really emerging out of their experience. But there's some dignity here
Yeah.
that
Yeah. The
you keep the
openness.
strength, keep referring to that. That's courage
Right.
to do that kind of, and taking in the breath.
Hmm.
What else do you like about dolphins that you identify with?
Well, when I see them on the beach, I could just watch them all day, just coming in and out. And I
Yes.
just think just everything about them, their playfulness, their intelligence, their protectors, they're communal in families or in pods. Um, I just think there's so much about them that for me.
Do you see all those qualities as your qualities, Jessica? That's right. That's
Yeah, maybe. Well, in some ways, yes.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
The lifting of your being willing to come out of
yeah,
whatever, the foam is that's going around.
mhm,
That is the workaday life. How
yeah,
you are willing to be to rise above that and to take the risk to be creative, to be, to breathe in, and this free spirited, this intelligence, like you are intelligent, you are this free spirit, and then to have a voice, to be able to tell story. And like you said, I heard you say sitting on the beach is a relaxing, a meditative almost
Yeah,
experience, and a joyful experience. And aren't those qualities that you see as important in your
oh,
therapeutic?
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, we need joy.
that's,
Joy. We need
yeah,
fun. We need silliness, playfulness.
yeah.
Yeah. Therapists need that. Clients need that.
And to be willing to dive back in,
Right.
come up
Absolutely.
and then go back in.
Absolutely.
There's no arrogance there. And that kind of clinical approach, that who you are is the the fullness of humility
Mhm.
and respect and regard for taking in who you are and taking in who you are present with. Beautiful. Who else did you bring today?
Yeah. So the other part I'll put on a little candle here and I'll put on that goes with it. Um, I think I talked a little bit about it, but this for me, this might be
Mhm.
hard to see the candle there.
Oh, a
But just the,
candle.
yeah, so the value of relationships. So the therapist client relationship, I work with families too. And so um just for me, even if it might be a client where I'm mostly working with the teenager or the kid and more of an individual work, always incorporating their parents, involving the parents or their caretakers in the work because, at the end of the day, they go home with them. It's the family. And so really
Mm.
having tremendous respect um, and honoring the value of relationship in the work, I think for me is,
Well, look at the arms that are melded on both sides, at the circle of connection here. From
yeah.
the view that that right now, how you're holding it, I also see that connection flowing down through the whole body. So there's not that you mentioned the word dance, and
Mhm.
it just feels appropriate that um trusting, the two figures, we can see they're face to face, so we can imagine the honesty and
Yes.
the looking into finding truth and holding that truth,
Mhm.
and then the flow. And you lit the candle. What is the candle, the light for you here?
Um, I think for me it's what I talked about earlier, just the love that in the connection of as human beings, right? And so that being at the root of it all and just
Mm.
um what that brings in relationships, that grows, there's trust, there's safety, there's love, um, and
There's
just how
flow.
there's
Even
flow.
with that little light, there is that movement. It right there at the center, and the light is shining on both of them.
Mhm. Yeah.
Something about balance and equality come to mind
Hmm.
in the smoothness. It's not defined by gender or
Right.
by ethnicity. There seems to be a simplicity in this connection. And reflecting back on your origin
Hmm.
and your global sensibilities of holding humankind, even humankind's representation in the very individual that you
Right.
hold,
Right.
the inner child, as well as the ancestors.
Hmm.
Now let's put the dolphin and the two who are holding, if we put them together,
Uh-huh.
what are you noticing about what comes up for you right there?
I just seeing the strength in both of like this upward strength and power again.
Yes.
Mhm.
Mhm. And the unification as well as the independence, that
Yes.
we are existentially alone
Yeah.
and together, that it can't be one or the other. And
Right.
look at how your selection today really chose materials that are that even over here, I feel softness, I feel flow. Now, just privately, I
Mm-hmm.
will often ask my interviewees to have a conversation, to listen to see what they want to say to you. And without sharing that with us, take a moment and see who speaks to them, to each other. Maybe they speak to you. Take a moment for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if they could both speak separate from what they said to you, but if they could both speak to us and to the world and to those who have come, our viewers, what
Mm-hmm.
is it that they would like to share with us? What is it they want us to really hear?
Mm-hmm.
A message from both of them?
Yeah. I think this dolphin wants everyone to know I am here. And here is safety, the message of safety, and
Mhm.
you're not
Mhm.
alone.
So, for the practice in our lives to create safety
Mm-hmm.
for our own inner child and our own um, immersions and depths, but also safety in connections.
Yeah.
These are beautiful, and I feel very certain that your own ability to bring both of these in your work as well as your everyday with your family and the
Mm-hmm.
lives that you touch, so beautiful. So let's move on to, is there a specific lesson that you learned from a client, a family, an experience? What was that lesson? What was that incident? Without, of course, sharing any identity. What happened in the therapy moment? What did you learn?
This is this is hard because there's lots of moments, but so the one that keeps coming back to me though, and so I'll use that, is somewhat personal because it was with my own child. When I was an intern, so still learning, knowing the work that I know now, but just very new to it all. Who was having a hard time. There was some grief there. Um,
Mm.
and kind of being reminded by somebody else, like, well, there's playrooms. And this was at a time where I was learning and co-leading a filial therapy group, which is working
Mhm.
with the parents to teach them the skills of child-centered play therapy, because the idea of the parent-child, really, that's where the real relationship is. Um, and so even as I'm like working with other families and talking to them
Yeah.
about this, right? Um, and so being able to do that with my own son, it totally like made me it convinced me for life, like the power in it. A hard time sleeping and hadn't slept through a night in more than a month. And that first night he slept through the night of having a session with me, and continued to do so up until around like day 5 or 6, once we kind of, and it almost sounds a little too good to be true, like, but that's really how it happens. And for me, that's all I needed, like the power of being seen, the power of having control. So like
Mm.
allowing the child in the playroom to have control. Kids have so little control in most of their lives. And
Yes.
so allowing them time to do that, allowing them to take the lead, being playful, not kind of forcing something on them that doesn't feel right. And being able to get that true empathy from a parent,
Mm.
to me, speaks the value and the depth of relationships, the parent-child relationships, that, you know, even as us therapists can do really good work, um, the real relationship is with in that family. And so being able to, I think that just taught me so much of, you know, don't ever think that I know another family, what, you know, what's better for them. Um, and even sometimes when parents are really, really tired and they're frustrated with whatever's going on for their kid,
Yeah.
right? And they might say some things that don't feel so great. To me, that's, and they love their child, right? They're coming here, they're trying to figure out a way to do it better. And so trusting that that relationship can help. Um, so doing it with my kid
Yeah.
really helped solidify it for me. Like, no.
I appreciate the bringing a part of your actual life
Mhm,
and experience, and how not only how healing that was for your son, and I
mhm,
can only imagine now years later how that time had is really under it really grounded him for now.
yeah.
Um, and how you as a therapist allowed yourself to open a channel between who you were as a human being mother
Mhm,
and take the skills that you were teaching other families to
mhm,
parent and bringing that and trusting so much in that process. Uh, to me, that connection where you just showed us with the candle is a
right.
beautiful representation of you and your son and the dolphin with your son
Yeah.
emerging
Yeah.
beautifully, as well as yourself in moving from being an intern to a full-on therapist and then therapist supervisor.
Yeah. I think
Powerful, beautiful, powerful. I want to
the
underscore
part,
for viewers. Go ahead.
I was going to say that that part about trust the process, I think, is just so important, because it's really easy
Mhm.
for us as therapists, right? Like, our anxiety can get in the way of things because we're not sure we're going to do it right, or what if we say something wrong, right? And it's like, that's all our stuff. But if we allow ourselves to trust the process and to trust the clients, um
Yes.
yeah, get ourselves out of the way.
Um, share with us you've had numerous experience immersing in experience. If you would share with us, what is the value of immersing in therapeutic process for you, whether that be just in general or specific examples, but how, and I want to sides footnote here that not all therapeutic graduate programs or trainings lift up or even use immersion, but how, like in art therapy, drama therapy, sound therapy, and many of the expressive arts, the therapist first immerses. So if you would share with us and comment on your experience of the value or your insights that come from immersing in any therapeutic process.
Mhm. um well, for one, I think it's really important for us as therapists to have experienced what we're asking our clients to do. And like, why would me want to try out something that is new and unfamiliar,
Yeah.
maybe even scary, knowing that my therapist, I mean, not that I would disclose to them, but like, you have a true appreciation for the difficulty that it is to come in and to do the work.
Yeah.
Um, and I think immersing ourselves in the process, it just makes us stronger therapists, right? Like, we can just really kind of just feel all the parts of it, and just in ways that if we're just telling somebody to do this or talking to them or at them rather than becoming a part of it, it's the whole experience, the value, the depth of where their work can go is just isn't there.
As a professor, I want to underscore no client should ever be an experiment.
Right.
That I just want to embrace what you're saying here is the vitalness of experiencing the vulnerability
Right.
and the receptivity, and what some of what clients may experience is invaluable for the growth and the integrity and the competency of clinicians.
Yeah.
I often like to ask therapists who are multilingual to speak from their language of heart and your home language, English and Spanish. We spend all our time here in English, and I wonder for our Spanish speaking community, if you would summarize the main ideas that you feel through our conversation you would like to, but speak in Spanish for them. And the rest of us who are not experts in Spanish can cultivate our patience in really tuning into and listening to the flow and the beauty of your language. Would you be willing to do that?
Okay.
Sure.
To kind of summarize what we've been talking about.
Sure. The main points for you, summarize anything. And then, of course, speak whatever from your heart that you want to say to the Latina community.
Oh, okay. Para mí, como terapeuta, la cosa más importante es tener empatía para mis clientes, nuestros clientes aquí, y el valor del amor de la familia. Que los niños vienen, los adolescentes vienen muchas veces con dolor, con miedo, pero hay momentos de felicidades también y que los padres tienen que ser parte de ese proceso. Y que hay fuerza en comunidad, que nadie es solo. Y como la terapeuta, mi trabajo es de estar al lado de mis clientes, ser testigo de las emociones, sentimientos, experiencias y historias y seguir adelante juntos.
I love tuning into all the languages I don't know to practice resonating with anything that sounds, of course, with the Latin languages, it's easier for all of us to tune in, but it is a wonderful practice to just to be present and to find the wave of the sentiment that's being expressed. For me, that's very helpful. And I really recommend that with every language, to be able to speak in the home language as well as just listen to stories. Now, for our viewers who are not familiar with familial training, I wanted to just anchor that as a resource that you've given us the personal story and the value. So if therapists aren't familiar and maybe whether they're working with families or just individuals, that this approach can so enhance no matter what methodologies or psychotherapeutic orientation. So what would you recommend in terms of resources that you would like therapists to take a look at?
So for me, a lot of my training came from the works of Louise Gurney and Bernard Gurney and the gifts that they left for our profession. That's really heavily focused on the value of relationship based. So looking towards their work in filial therapy, the child-centered therapies, and Bernard Gurney's relationship enhancements. therapy
Hey,
that really, that puts value on the family, how they communicate, the value of empathy, and trusting that they know what they need.
giving them the space and the safety, just the incredible respect and readiness to tell their stories when they are ready, and
Right.
not to have to fight against what may be felt from the power or the judgment or narrow landscape of practice that any therapist might
And
have.
I have to also say, I can't stop with the gurneys. Dee.
Yes,
I have to also say all of your contributions and the trainings I've received from you have been so incredibly valuable in honoring those stories and
thank you.
just the narrative sand therapy, and that each object, each figure carries with them a story, and just the power in that. I think some of my most memorable and meaningful sessions with clients have been their work in creating sand scenes and not a word spoken, and me feeling so comfortable in
Yeah.
not feeling like I need to get them to say something about it, but really honoring
Mhm.
the clients and reminding clients, thanking them for the privilege to be able to be witness to their stories. And it doesn't stop with the gurney. I cannot talk about all of I have taken away from the trainings and the guidance you've provided and helping
Thank
me.
you. But we do want people to find competent, filial, child-centered, person-centered, empathy-centered, and in a narrative approaches White and Epstein's work down in Australia and New Zealand, and social constructionist approaches. So the humanistic and um, existential,
Yes.
incredible combination of these approaches, which really embrace and
Mhm.
really hold and lift up the human spirit, the human suffering, and gives us hope
Absolutely.
and possibility rather
Absolutely.
than um, the dangers and hazards that can happen in every profession. Jessica, what is it that you would like to bring closure to in sharing with the colleagues, with therapists out there? um, what is it that you most, if this was a moment where you could most share with the widest audience, what is it that you want to say to them?
Um, I think talking about just, how we were talking about stories. And so um, every client that comes into your office has a story, has many stories. Um, and to never underestimate the power of being the person that gets to hear them, whether you're the 20th person to have heard the same story or the first person to have ever heard that. Like, um, for me, it really is a privilege that I get to do that for my work. Um, and I never want to take that for granted. So just making sure that we remind ourselves of that, and that we also have our stories, and to honor those and to take care of those as well.
Yeah. Well, it's been an honor and a privilege to have a conversation with you. I really appreciate your approach, the work that you do with training therapists and with guiding interns, and the representation that you are to multiple communities, and all that you hold together, the light that you shine. And I applaud, and I just want to step back and watch the porpoise, the dolphin within you, emerge and splash the joy of the play and the creativity, and the deep compassion and sincerity that you bring. Jessica, thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
I hope to see you again.
Yes. Thank you
Take
so
good
much.
care. And to all of you out there, Take gentle, good care of yourself with self care. Work with the stories that you hold within your heart. Find a safe and trusting place and person that you can share that with. So take good, gentle care, everyone. Until next time, bye bye.